China is close to releasing a government cryptocurrency as soon as November 11th. So the People's Bank of China, according to Bloomberg, and this is quoting a senior official at the People's Bank of China, which is China's central bank, they are quote unquote close to issuing their own cryptocurrency. In additional reports from other mainstream financial media mainstream media and mainstream financial media sources, whether it's Quartz, which put out an article, let's see here, on September 19th of 2019 by Matthew De Silva, what China could gain from a digital yuan. Also quoting sources recently at the end of August, on August 27th, 2019, from a Forbes article from Michael Del Castillo. And he is citing another source. This guy's name is Paul Schulte, who worked as a global head of financial strategy for China Construction Bank until 2012. And that source is saying the largest bank in the world, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, or ICBC as it's known, the second largest bank in the world, his former employer, the Bank of China, the Agricultural Bank of China, two of China's largest financial technology companies, Alibaba and Tencent, and UnionPay, an association of Chinese banks, will receive the government cryptocurrency. And Quartz is saying with a date that it could be as soon as November 11th, which is, I guess, a holiday coinciding with Singles Day, a popular Chinese shopping holiday. So just craziness, more craziness. There's other stories coming out of China as well about how bad the middle class situation is. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but this is about tying in, and hat tip to my best friend Dan, who also sent me another article similar. This is about tying in why China wants to go to crypto quickly, why it seems they want to accelerate and be the first government to have a digital full cryptocurrency. So blockchain technology, the best way to explain it most simply with blockchain is it is a real-time database. So there's other programs, software programs that are database, but blockchain offers the ability to have instantaneous database updates. And if a government has control of that with the other right software scanning these things, it can become very totalitarian, very draconian, very nefarious, very, very quickly. And this benefits the Chinese government because a real-time government cryptocurrency where you, in China, if you're not familiar with the economy, with the Chinese economy is more or less already has gone cashless. A lot of people in major cities pay with smartphones, and they do it on WeChat Pay or Alipay. Those are the two main programs that they pay with, but it's more out of convenience. It's not necessarily by force or anything like that. It's more out of convenience because a lot of people just don't carry around cash. And then also, if you're going to a restaurant or a shop or something, there's QR codes for things. Wall Street Journal and others have done stories about this, showing videos about people walking around cities in China and paying, and the convenience of it. And it's not necessarily by government law. It's mostly that the private sector voted that this is going to be the convenient way. But this also benefits the Chinese government because then it's easier to track and tax every transaction. And then when you combine that with the social credit score, and China has a very draconian social credit score, and my top source in China has been telling me for months now about the social credit score and how things work and how things are integrating now. And the goal for the Chinese government was to use the social credit score and a real-time updating cashless government cryptocurrency to monitor transactions in almost real time. So very little lag, almost exactly real time. So for example, then case studies, if one were to, let's say, buy a VPN service, and the Chinese government could have this red flag then in a very short amount of time. Or if someone's buying unapproved goods or services, like let's say if you're in mainland China, whether you're a foreigner there or mainland Chinese, and you're buying American porn or you're buying Japanese porn and the websites are in the database already, those purchases can be flagged and your social credit score can be docked. And same thing with VPN services and also, other American imports or European imports, goods and things like that. So when you combine this with a government crypto, with a social credit score system, and the social credit score system with a government crypto, if you think things are bad in China, they can get a lot worse very, very quickly. once the social credit score is integrated more completely with a government cryptocurrency, and there's the software there to search for certain websites of unapproved purchases of goods and services. And then you combine that with the story that my best friend sent me, which is about the cameras in China. Let me just pull it up real quick. So this story just came out a few days ago that China is now unveiling a 500 megapixel digital camera that can identify every face in a crowd of tens of thousands. So Chinese scientists have developed a 500 megapixel facial recognition camera, 4 times more detailed than the human eye, that can identify individuals from crowds of tens of thousands in streets or at sports stadiums. The development raises further civil liberty concerns about the rapidly advancing surveillance technology linked with artificial intelligence. Dubbed the super camera, the technology was unveiled by researchers at China's Industrial Industry Fair last week. China currently has an estimated 200 million CCTV cameras watching over its citizens. I think that number is low. I've heard from my top source in China, who's lived in mainland China for a decade, that China has closer to 600 million government cameras. And these cameras have very advanced facial recognition software built into them. They always update it. And they also have this new software called GAIT technology, GAIT, which is, it can detect who you are by how you walk, your gait. So if you're not familiar with what that is, it was previewed. This is fictional, but it shows an example of that. It was in the first season of The Punisher, so on Netflix. So that's how one of the characters figured out how it was Frank Castle, how it was the Punisher, because he was watching monitoring with his, this character worked for the NSA, or former NSA employee, and he programmed the gate software. He was monitoring for people, and he figured out it was the Punisher just by the way he walked. So tons and tons of these 200, whether you believe the estimates of 200 million CCTV cameras that the Chinese government runs and monitors, or the 600 million, it's still an enormous, absolutely enormous number. That's millions of cameras per city. And an absolutely mind-boggling enormous number. It's very expensive to maintain these cameras, and also the amount of energy. So anyone who's saying that the Chinese government is focused on being environmentally responsible, just running this many cameras, the amount of energy usage and fans, not fans, but in their data servers, the fans, but the amount of energy usage for maintaining these cameras is insane. So this is the nefarious ways that governments can hijack blockchain technology, not Bitcoin, blockchain technology, and use it for their own nefarious purposes, is to combine blockchain technology with a social credit score system, and then with a very nefarious totalitarian surveillance state. Scary stuff. And eventually this stuff may come to the US as well, because a lot of people in big technology, whether it's at Alphabet, Google, Facebook, a lot of these technocrats, a lot of these technology executives, even the lower and mid-level employees, a lot of them are making a lot of money and are still brainwashed with Marxism. I've seen tons of Google employees, pictures of them wearing Che Guevara t-shirts and other obscure Marxist and socialist references on their t-shirts, despite how many of them are making 6 figures or more in salary and stock options. They want to integrate an Americanized version of social credit score here in the US. So people like me who point this stuff out, we're going to get docked. They could potentially shut down my bank account or credit cards or anything like that very, very quickly. So just more craziness out of China. I could read more of these stories. There's a number of these stories about how the rollout for China's cryptocurrency from some of the bigger entities could happen soon. Now, China is already, like I said, it's more of a voluntary, out of convenience, cashless system. But this integration of a government crypto can make things even more draconian. So if you send the wrong message to the wrong person on social media, you could immediately get fined, or enormous docking of your social credit score. These things can accelerate now even faster. This would be, if you think China has full control of their citizens now, this would only increase more control. Crazy stuff. AI will eat crypto. It seems these governments want blockchain technology for monitoring purposes, because once you have you can monitor people's purchases in real-time database. Then if you eliminate cash, you eliminate the black market. And then all transactions theoretically could be tracked and taxed. So they could it would be easier for Andrew Yang, the politician here in the US, who wants to put a 17% VAT tax to fund his universal basic income. He wants to put a 17% VAT tax, value added tax, on all spending. It would be a lot easier for the US federal government in that situation to implement a VAT tax if cash is banned and everyone has to do all of their spending on a government crypto. Then all transactions are monitored, all transactions could be taxed. Yep, instant tax, and this gives governments more. This could collapse the economy though, because then people might consume less. If they're having to pay an extra 17% tax, you're going to see a lot of people then stop consuming or drastically cut their consumption, especially in a lot of discretionary items. Crazy stuff. So if you want to read more about this, I have 3 or 4 articles here about this. The People's Bank of China is saying its own cryptocurrency is close to release. The Bloomberg article came out on August 12th. So the People's Bank of China is close to issuing its own cryptocurrency, according to a senior official. The bank's researchers have been working intensively since last year to develop systems, and the cryptocurrency is, quote, close to being out. Mu Chengchun, deputy director of the PBOC's payments department, said in an event held by China Finance 40 Forum over the weekend. So this was in mid-August. He didn't give specifics on the timing, but the other reports from other sources are saying it could be as early as November 11th. We'll see. So Mu repeated the People's Bank of China's intention that the digital currency would replace M0 or cash in circulation rather than M2, which would generate credit and impact monetary policy. The remarks signal the PBOC is inching toward formally introducing a digital currency of its own after 5 years of research. China would be one of the first major economies to do so. Facebook's push to create cryptocurrency Libra has caused concerns among global central banks, including the People's Bank of China, which said the digital asset must be put under central bank oversight to prevent potential foreign exchange risks and protect the authority of monetary policy. The central bank will, quote, expedite the research on China's legal digital tender and monitor the trends of virtual currency development at overseas and at home, the PBOC said in a statement listing its work plan for the second half of 2019 released in early August. So this is a short article update. There's more in-depth ones from Quartz and Forbes. The Quartz one, which is written by Democrats and mainstream media, is saying how this would benefit the Chinese government and not talking about how this would hurt civil liberty and libertarians and anyone who cares about free speech. Not that there is any free speech in China, but other governments would monitor the situation closely. The Davos crowd, remember, they were giving Xi enormous applause only a couple years ago. And a lot of the Davos crowd are enormous hypocrites, champagne socialist hypocrites. So they may have made money off capitalism, but now they don't want to, they want to do what John D. Rockefeller said. They want to end competition, and they want to basically turn everyone into no free speech serfs with devalued currency and more taxes. Michael says, thank you for the super chat, Michael. He says, we won't get rid of cash because the drug trade equals more government dollars. Maybe. Or there's backdoors into the cryptocurrency. Or there's backdoors to create more supply, and the backdoors are allowed. So the government says the supply of cryptocurrency is one thing, and in reality it's another, and there's free backdoors into it, which I suspect is why no one trusts the Venezuela cryptocurrency, the Petro. No one trusts that because Venezuela was saying that it's backed by oil. Well, how can you trust Venezuela's cryptocurrency to be this certain number of amount? Plus, Venezuela's oil production has collapsed. Aaron Fletcher, thank you for the super chat. China recently bought Belt and Road ads on Bloomberg. Do you think this has influenced coverage of the Chinese economy? Yes, I do. And actually, if you check out the work of China Uncensored, they've been saying that the Chinese government has been paying tens of billions of dollars for favorable ads from Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, and the Financial Times and the Economist for over a decade. And I believe I think it's the Wall Street Journal. They said that the Chinese government pays the Wall Street Journal hundreds of millions of dollars for a favorable China Watch section of their paper, where positive Chinese economic articles are written. So, China Uncensored has been covering this for years. China also has an extensive lobbying network here in the United States for politicians on both sides. Peter Schweitzer has a book out about it called Secret Empires, about how Mitch McConnell on the Republican side and Joe Biden on the Democrat side are two of the worst. Kyle Bass, guys, just did an incredible interview. He was extremely candid. I'm not done with the interview. I decided to do this short live stream show first. The interview was released a couple days ago on the American Thought Leaders, the Epoch Times YouTube channel, and he's incredibly candid about the goals that China has and the Chinese economy. It's one of his best interviews that I've ever heard him do. It has over 35,000 views so far. I will put the interview at the end of this video after the show's over for you guys to take a look. So there has been a lot of mainstream media and mainstream financial media taking money from the Chinese for years. A lot of totally unethical people here in DC that will defend any position or defend any lobbying group if there's enough money. That's how things work here in DC, Republican or Democrat. And the Chinese, up until recently, they had a lot of dollars. So China has these enormous amounts. Let me continue with the article about the megapixel cameras. So the current CCTV network is a central tool in gathering data about citizens, but the cameras aren't always powerful enough to take a clear picture of someone's face in a crowd. The new 500 megapixel or 500 million pixel camera will help to remedy this. And remedies in air quotes, I'll say. So for the past few years, China has been building a social credit system that will generate a score for each citizen based upon data about their lives, such as their credit score, whether they donate to charity, and their parenting ability. Also, whether or not they look at YouTube channels like Wall Street for Main Street, because now Wall Street for Main Street, from what I've heard from multiple sources, is flagged in mainland China. Punishments and rewards that citizens will receive based upon their score include access to better schools and universities and restricted travel. And the network is a central tool in gathering data about its citizens, but the cameras aren't always powerful enough. Okay, I reread that. And the camera will help to, quote-unquote, remedy this. The camera's artificial intelligence will be able to scan a crowd and identify an individual within seconds. Samantha Hoffman, an analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, told the ABC, this is Australia's ABC, I guess, that the government has massive databases of people's images, and that data generated from surveillance video can be, quote, fed into a pool of data that, combined with AI processing, can generate tools for social control, including tools linked to the social credit system. So all these things, guys, I've been trying to connect the pieces of the puzzle for you. All these things lead to full and total totalitarian dystopian government. When you combine government crypto with social credit score, and then also an unbelievable surveillance state with all the modern software technology for scanning faces, facial recognition, and cameras, digital cameras, zoom features. And if you think that this is only going to be in China, think again. Eventually, the elites, the Davos crowd, the powers that be, the economic and political elites who hate capitalism, even though some of them have made a lot of money off of it, they want to end it, any vestiges of it, any competition, because they're all from that John D. Rockefeller crowd. And also Freedom to Fascism, that Aaron Burr made a documentary about that crowd, like the other Rockefeller, David Rockefeller. And they want to implement versions of that in the European Union and the United States. You want to smash the cameras? There's too many of them, man. There's too many of them. At least in China and also London. Okay, so let me continue with the article. The government has massive database. Okay, fed into a pool social credit system in the United Kingdom. The Home Office has been trailing facial recognition technology despite opposition from campaign groups and the police forces themselves. South Wales Police, this is, I think, Australia, announced this summer that they would trial real-time facial recognition technology. In this month, the practice was ruled lawful by the High Court. The Metropolitan Police also admitted recently that they had supplied King's Cross, no, I guess this is London, because King's Cross is a neighborhood in London, right? King's Cross Estate, an area of offices and shops with images to enable facial recognition. So you layer these technologies on top of each other, you combine them, and it becomes complete and total government control. Scary stuff. Absolutely scary stuff. And then behind the scenes, China is placing key government officials high up in Alibaba. So not only was a good amount or all of Jack Ma's ownership in Alibaba transferred to 5 unnamed partners with the same address, but now China is installing high-level government officials to monitor all their major technology companies. You have China firms dumping $40 billion in global assets. They've turned a net seller for the first time in decades, a story from about a week ago. And recently, it looks like one of China's social security funds is already bankrupt. The finance ministry is transferring bank shares to the social security fund to make up for problems in their social security fund. So all these crazy stories in China. And the gold community, the alternative media, most cases won't cover any of this stuff. Multiple sources. Forbes has multiple sources on this article. Quartz has sources, and Bloomberg is also quoting a source inside, high up in the People's Bank of China. Multiple sources on this. Okay, I'll read a source who worked at one of the largest Chinese banks from this Forbes article. So this guy is named Paul Schulte, who worked as a global head of financial strategy for China Construction Bank until 2012. So he worked in China for one of the largest banks in China. Well, it is the largest bank in the world, the second largest bank in the world. Excuse me, let me reread this. China's central bank will launch a state-backed cryptocurrency and issue it to 7 institutions in the coming months, according to a former employee of one of the institutions who is now an independent researcher. Paul Schulte, who worked as global head of financial strategy for China Construction Bank until 2012, says the largest bank in the world, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, the second largest bank in the world, which was his former employer, the Bank of China, the Agricultural Bank of China, 2 of China's largest financial technology companies, Alibaba and Tencent, and UnionPay, an association of Chinese banks, will receive the cryptocurrency first. A separate source who's involved in the development of the cryptocurrency, dubbed DCEP, Digital Currency Electronic Payments, confirmed, so this was an additional source for the article, confirmed that the 7 institutions would be receiving the new asset when it launches, adding that an 8th institution could also be among the first tier of recipients. The source declined to provide the name of the additional company, speaking under terms of anonymity, because if you were to get caught doing this in China, you could get in trouble. At least a social credit score ding, maybe worse. The source who previously worked for the Chinese government confirmed that the technology behind the cryptocurrency has been ready since last year, and that the cryptocurrency could launch as soon as November 11th, China's busiest shopping day known as Singles' Day. At the time of the launch, the recipient institutions will then be responsible for dispersing the cryptocurrency to 1.3 billion Chinese citizens and others doing business in the RMB, China's fiat currency, according to the source. The source added that the central bank hopes the currency will eventually be made available to spenders in the United States and elsewhere through relationships with correspondent banks in the West. So thank you, Greg, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Another interesting story that just came out a couple days ago from the South China Morning Post is that China intends to boost bank dividends and reduce the cap on their bad loan provisions, which doesn't make a lot of sense unless you listen to the Kyle Bass interview about how China's trying to lure foreign capital investment into China from the US and the European Union. Because it doesn't make a lot of sense when Chinese banks are in trouble to try to increase dividends at the Chinese banks unless you're trying to trap foreign investors with yield traps and trap their capital inside China and not allow it to leave. Government backed? Well, it might be government enforced. Either way, the government is trying to roll this out. They view this as a source of control. I'm well aware of what the Satoshi white paper said and the reason for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. I'm well aware of that it was to try to stop governments. But if you look at the history of governments, governments have always tried to take new technology and hijack it, normally for weapons or military or more control of their own citizens. And blockchain technology and cryptocurrency is no exception. When Gutenberg invented, well, he actually wasn't the inventor of the printing press. There was other people who did. I think he just won the most lawsuits. But when the printing press became more widespread usage, and it would open up more people to reading, and it would democratize information more, what do you think happened after that? The governments tried to ban. The governments tried to coerce and cajole and bribe newspapers. The governments tried to ban media, or at least only their chosen media. That's why they give out charters. That's why there's, with the mainstream media here in the United States, that's why there's all these, the permits. There's the charters for the large news networks. They're afraid of having their charters revoked. Well, my point, though, with Gutenberg and the printing press was it should have allowed everyone to have easier access to reading and learning and information. And if you look back through history, it didn't exactly do that. The governments just used it as another tool for more control. And then they put in laws in place with either permits or charters or licenses. They put those rules in place. There's so many comments coming in, I can't see all the trolls. Yeah, it is reminiscent of a Black Mirror episode. Thank you, Jose. I'm glad you like my content. Okay, well, I think that's enough for this update. If you want to read the news stories more about the launch of the government crypto, I will put the stories in the information and description section of the video. I want to thank my 150 Patreon account contributors. You're really making my life a lot easier, a lot less stressful. And also my almost a dozen monthly PayPal contributors. Thank you very much. I now have a donation too for I could take 6 cryptocurrencies. The wallet address is in the information and description section of this video, and I highly recommend you take about the 50 minutes or so to watch the Kyle Bass interview that I'm going to put at the end of this video after it's over. The sources are there, guys. I have 3 articles citing different sources. The Forbes article alone has multiple sources in it. So China is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be November 11th. That's when other people are reporting it. But they are going to be rolling this out soon. And this makes it easier for China in the event of they devalue their currency faster, that it'll be harder for more Chinese citizens to get out of the currency if they ban cash. My birthday's on Friday. I see you guys remembered. Thank you very much. Do I think this is bullish for Bitcoin or not? That's a good question. I'm not sure. You know, there would be, you would think that this would be bullish. This is just my opinion, not financial advice. You would think that this would be bullish for Bitcoin because now more Chinese citizens would see that, oh my God, this is actually going to roll out. I got to take my RMB and I got to go meet someone in person and go buy Bitcoin now to get out. You'd think that that would be, but Bitcoin hasn't reacted that way. So you'd think that, but it's acting counterintuitively. Guys, maybe it's the Chinese government that's shorting Bitcoin to discourage people from buying it as they plan on rolling this out in a couple months. Maybe it's the Chinese government that's manipulating Bitcoin down. I wouldn't put it past them. Oh, it was a Mr. Robot episode? You know, I think I vaguely remember that. It's been a while since I've seen Mr. Robot. I did watch all the shows, but I don't think there's been a Mr. Robot for a year and a half. It's been a while. Okay, well, that's it for now. Thank you very much for your time. And the goal is to provide the most unique content of any YouTube channel. And I think we're doing that.